2 until 10. And then if I need them during the week, I can put out an alert, Halifax alert to my team, and they will respond if we don't have anybody to respond. And then we have our business support person. We were very strategic in picking our business support person who has a lot of background in responding to victims, has a counseling degree, and so he kind of does our intake when he's answering phone. Oftentimes people will call in crisis, and he's able to kind of stabilize the conversation sometimes until one of us can be brought on board to speak with them. Our goals in our unit, we are there really to enhance the services that are provided to by police to victims. And I'll speak a little bit later about being trauma informed and the training that we provide. But we do provide a coordinated trauma informed response to victims in coordination with other agencies. We work hand in hand with EFRI. We work hand in hand with most of the other Bryony House, all of the agencies that provide services to victims. We all know each other on a name, first name basis. We all have each other's, personal cells and call when in times of real troubles when we need to, find somebody a place to stay or need services that aren't typically available after 5. We do a lot of work in the community. We increase the awareness of community-based services through education, and I'll talk about some of the education on another slide that we do. And then we work to increase supports and healing for victims through the research that we do. And I'll speak to some of that later on as well, and the education that we do within the community. So as I said before, we support anyone that has experienced a trauma. We specialize in intimate partner violence, certainly, and sexual assault, but we also respond to robberies, sudden deaths, homicides, and officer-led referrals. Oftentimes, officers will go to a call, and there's really nothing criminally that's happened, but they know that this particular couple or this particular person needs to be connected to someone, or something tragic could happen, or perhaps that person is going to find themselves in peril. So oftentimes we'll get a call from guys on the street to say, listen, I've got this person, I really don't know who we can direct them to, or how we can connect them with services. Or they might call us to say, I'm here at a place where dad's just been arrested, mom's here with 2 little kids, there's no food in the fridge, there's no milk for the baby. And we are so thankful and lucky to have the support of one of the biggest travel agencies in the province, who, instead of at Christmas time exchanging gifts with each other, they all donate $25 gift cards, and then those gift cards are all donated to our office. And so we're able to provide some groceries, get some milk or some diapers or whatever. So oftentimes those, when you talk about officers and how they react to folks on the streets, the kindness and compassion, I've seen officers actually go out and load up the trunk with groceries on their own dime. So we do a lot of work with officers to kind of connect people where we think they may be able to go. Our responses are always proactive, whether it's from the call from an officer or another community agency. I go through the calls every single morning, the calls that are routed to victim services, which are any calls that have a victim linked to it. And then from there, I'll review every one of those files every morning, and then I hand them off to whichever caseworker is going to be looking after them. Speaking of the homicides, we've been in touch with the victims from last week's homicide, and just last night I was speaking with the mom of the the young man who died this week and his partner, to provide them with services, whatever services we can provide. Certainly connect them with grief counseling and, anything. The other thing is a lot of people are connecting with them right now. Last night when I called mom, she had a host full of people there. We also make it our job to kind of follow up with them. Once again, after everything is settled down, the funeral's over, people have gone back to their normal lives, and people often find themselves then wondering what's next and what to do next. So we always do a check-in with them to see how things are going, if they have any questions, and kind of provide them that grief opportunity again, to speak about their grief or to connect them with somebody about their grief. We have responded to robberies at banks where, they have their own people that are coming to provide support to their employees, but we're just kind of that, it just happened. We kind of go and sit around and I call it loitering with intent. We'll go sit around and in case people need to talk until their people get there. So there's all kinds of things that we will respond to. We do crisis intervention. A lot of our work is crisis intervention. A lot of the people who call our phone, a lot of our cold calls are people in crisis. So oftentimes they are at a loss for what they do next. A number of calls that we receive are the morning after calls after a spouse has been arrested, and the victim just calls police because she wants the violence to stop, not thinking that as a result of her call to police, now her spouse has been arrested. Now her spouse is sitting in jail waiting to go to court. We get those calls the next morning, and those women, usually women, are terrified that their spouse has been sitting in jail all night festering. Why did I make that call? What can I do to make the charges go away? How do I get them varied so he can come back home? Because oftentimes this man may be the breadwinner, so now she has nothing. This man may be the carer of the children because she works and he's home during the day to take care of the children. So oftentimes we'll get those calls, and we usually get those calls pretty early in the morning. When we go in, there's usually calls on the line of women wanting to know, what do I do now? And what's going to happen when he's released? And so we do a lot of talk around what the process is, how we can connect them. We make referrals to Wendy, who we'll talk about a little bit later. We will, make sure that they're aware that they're not the ones who laid the charge. A lot of victims take great comfort in learning that because, again, they are going to have to deal with the accused at some point. And when we say to them, police lay the charge, you don't lay the charge. So, you don't have the power to remove the charge. And then we'll talk to them about the options that the accused has. Was this a one-time thing and things got out of hand? Is he going to take responsibility right away? We can connect him with the domestic violence court. We can connect him with Wendy, to see kind of where he wants to go from here. And then we try to spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time with victims talking to them about the break. We call it the break, but rather than having him go down the next day to the courthouse to get a hearing to have the orders varied, we talk to them about that 30-day break. He's going to be in court within a month, and for the last how many years have you been on edge every single day, wondering what's going to happen? When is it going to happen again? Take the time to just breathe for the next month, figure it out. Eventually it can all be back. You can be back together with the right proper, counseling and things like that. But so we do a lot of work around that crisis intervention with, especially with our IPV individuals. We provide them with a lot of emotional support. Short-term counseling will connect them immediately either to online counseling, or we have a new partnership with Fireside Counseling, Brightside Counseling, I believe it's called, where we can get them in kind of immediately until their criminal injuries counseling cuts in. We will fill out those criminal injuries applications on their behalf and submit them, so it's like one less bit of paperwork for them to do. We provide them with police case information, the information around what's going to happen next, what the police investigation, he was arrested, this is what's going to happen to him this morning when he goes to court, or if he's been released, from cells, we can provide them with their conditions, a copy of the conditions, all of those kinds of things. We do a lot of advocating for victims, especially with child and family well-being. A lot of women are terrified when they hear that child protection is going to become a call-in, because they've heard from other people, or they've seen where people's children have been apprehended. And so we spend a lot of time talking to them about the benefits of having child protection involved, having that it's an extra layer of support for them, and the fact that they can they can hook you up with counseling, they can get the kids into counseling quicker, they have little pots of money that if we need to have cameras installed at your residence, we can kind of tap into those things. So we spend a lot of time kind of changing the attitude towards having child protection involved in their life. And then sometimes when child protection is involved in their life, and they're a little heavy-handed, oftentimes we will, hold a case management meeting and invite all of the support people that are working with the victim, so that the victim it's amazing to see when we hold these case management meetings, and the victim has been trying to do this on her own for such a long time. And then, we invite her to come to a meeting where we have all of our support people there, and she walks into a room, with 5 or 6 people in there, and she just can't believe that all of these people actually care about her and the safety and protection of her children. So we use that opportunity sometimes with child and family well-being to talk about, if you don't want to, if you don't want the children there, then are we going to work with her to make sure that she and the children are in a safe place, but that she's not losing some of the privileges and that she has with her children. So a lot of stuff gets done in those meetings. We often are the liaison between police and victims. When we're doing training with police, we often tell them that, they go to a call and they do their work, and then they move on to their next call, and we get the referral for that victim. We may be involved with that victim for 3 to 6 months, depending on, family court hearings and, what's needed, and when court cases are coming up, and helping them prep for those things. So oftentimes we're in contact with that victim for a long period of time, whereas police have been there, done what they need to do, and they've moved on to their next case. And we also do crisis on scene support. So at any time, police will call, dispatch will call and say, we have a fatal shooting or a fatal motor vehicle accident, or we have a robbery's just occurred, and we have witnesses here who need support. Can you send someone? And so we have on a rotation basis, and folks will go out on scene immediately. We have our own vehicle, we have our own radios, and so we will go and respond to that, whatever it is that they need us for. Our volunteers on the weekends and during the days, we do have some days when they're there, they will go out in the vehicle. They leave the radios on, and they're listening constantly to the calls. And if there's something going on, they will actually go and kind of set up in an area close by, let dispatch know that they're nearby if police need us. And then oftentimes police will take advantage of that and have folks come in and talk about it. How do we get our referrals? So as I said, we get our referrals every morning. My day starts at 6 a.m. I'm looking at the calls from the night before and, putting them into the queues where they belong. We have our volunteers come in and work on our general, we call general files. They work on those. We have a 2 to 5 day response for those. And then we have students from the Dalhousie School of Social Work who come and do placements with us. Once I get them trained, then they basically are looking after our volunteer queue. So our calls are going from, a 2 to 5 day response to a 2-day response, which is great because we can get to people quicker. As I said before, we get direct referrals from police, and a lot of our calls are client initiated. When you Google victim services, our number comes up bright and bold. So we get calls from all across the province, from people who just have questions, who need to get out, who need to find out, which department they should be calling. We get a lot of Department of Justice victim service calls because they think we're all one and the same. So we often will go and have a look, at court dates, what's coming up, and then connect them to the folks who can support them, in the court and all of those things. Some of these people we never know. We never know their name. We never know their circumstance. We let them know that we're not police officers. So unless you tell me that you're going to harm yourself or someone else, kind of what you're telling me stays with me. And then we try to hand them off the best we can to folks who can provide them better service. And a lot of our calls are from rural. They're from rural people who really don't have a transition house in their community. So they're asking questions about how can I get help if I need it? So oftentimes we'll refer them over to our victim service RCMP folks and in that kind of area and try to get them hooked up with that, or directly with Transition House, because they can support them from community to community. These are some of the numbers that we're showing. This is from 2018 to 2024, and some of the domestic violence cases that have been reported that we have worked on in our office. And you can see that even though the calls, we had 919 no charge files in our office. That doesn't mean we haven't worked on them. We don't necessarily work on no charge files. We mostly do all of our work on the charge files. But like I said, most of the calls that just come in to us are calls from people in these no charge files. We're hopeful that at some point we'll be able to partner with Amy and her group to start looking at what some of those non-police charge files might look like, that maybe they can get calls to those folks and be able to get some support from them. We try to accommodate them, but we just don't have the capacity in our office to work on no charge files. Our high-risk case coordination program, I should have told you in the beginning, prior to taking over the victim service unit within Halifax Regional, I was the first high-risk case coordinator that was hired in the province back with the RCMP back in 2002. I'm in my 24th-ish year of policing now. And I learned most of the high-risk case coordination. We started from the ground up. Phonse McNeil was still the police chief then, and we were working really hard to kind of get this whole program up and running. It was as a result of a murder-suicide that happened in Truro in 2000, and the chief of Truro Police at that time was very concerned because there were so many agencies working with that particular couple, and yet nobody knew, that the sheriffs were on their way out there to serve him with a probation order the day that he shot and killed her and then killed himself. And the chief back at that time said, how can so many people be working towards working with this couple, but nobody was speaking to each other. So as a result of that, and as a result of the high-risk case coordination protocol, we were able to lower some of those silos. So now, when a case is designated high risk here in Nova Scotia, we are able to share information with 6 service providers that are working in the high-risk case coordination protocol. So, the local transition house, the men's program, child protection, sheriff's unit, the corrections folks at DOJ and the corrections folks, we are able to share pertinent information about that particular couple so that we're all kind of on the same page with regards to how we're going to support that couple going forward. In my unit, it's very much a team approach. Our high-risk case coordinated files are very much a team approach. Our DVO, our domestic violence case coordinator, and our DVON work hand in hand to make sure that he's supported, she's supported, and that we are following, everything that we can do to keep that particular couple safe. And I'll speak to that a little bit in a couple more slides, but we make attempts to contact the victim. Typically, we have a 2 phone call response. We try to contact them twice, and if we don't get a hold of them, then we send a letter out in the mail. In these high-risk cases, we take it a step further. We will do 2 phone calls to attempt to reach the victim. We often know that their phones get smashed during incidents. So if we try to reach them twice and we can't get them, then our domestic violence officer will accompany us and we'll go do a door knock. We'll find out where she is and go do a door knock so that we can offer face-to-face service. We have our domestic violence alarm program. It's been running in HRP since 1986. And we use our domestic violence alarms specifically in our high-risk cases. And what the alarms, they're GPS alarms that we can provide to the victim. We especially give them to victims whose phones have been smashed and they don't have a way to call 911. So we usually use those specifically for our high-risk people. We've also been gifted through elections Nova Scotia a whole box of brand new cell phones that they only use for the election and then they get rid of immediately after. So now we have an abundance of cell phones. When we know somebody's cell phone's been smashed, we can provide them with a cell phone that they can literally get a new SIM card and they have an up and running working phone. So our risk management partners include the Department of Justice Victim Services, Child and Family Wellbeing, Bryony House, New Start Counseling, Correctional Services, Public Prosecution, Domestic Violence Court, and the Risk Unit within Nova Scotia Sheriff Services. And when I talk about a high-risk case coordinated file, immediately after we receive the designation or the ODARE score or the Jacqueline Campbell, which I'll explain again in a minute, we immediately fill out what's called a Form 1, and we put all the specific information that all the other service providers need to know on that particular form. We email that form off to all of that list of people there. And then we start coordinating from there. We start coordinating, what's child protection's involvement going to be, DOJ, if he's being held for court today, DOJ is immediately finding out what the status is, contacting the victim to let them know whether he's been released or being held. Bryony House is engaged with high risk. If they don't have room, if they have a waiting list, and we call and say we have a high risk victim, then immediately, whether she has to sleep on a couch at Bryony or they have to get her a hotel room, they're immediately brought in to the house. With New Start, they don't wait the 3 months, as they usually have a waiting list there. They don't have to wait that long. They're kind of moved up to the top of the list. With corrections, typically when a victim will go in to the courthouse, we can contact Sheriff Services, and Sheriff Services will make sure that when that victim arrives at court, that they are assigned. Usually an extra sheriff will be brought in that day. They'll be assigned that sheriff, and that sheriff will keep an eye on things so that she's not intimidated, or threatened by anyone that may be out in the waiting room. Same thing happens with family court. When we know that high-risk cases are in family court, because criminal court and family court don't talk to each other, we make sure that that there's an extra sheriff on, and that sheriff at family court will accompany that victim, be in the courtroom while she's there, and make sure that she gets safely to her vehicle afterwards. And then the domestic violence court, we will make, if the accused is immediately accepting responsibility and wants to go through the domestic violence court, Wendy will, make that referral over to the domestic violence court, or instruct them on how to get, speak to legal aid to get themselves moved over into that, to that court. So there's a lot of work that goes into one file. And I was looking before I left this morning, and I think we're at number, like 39 high-risk cases right now, and it's only April 1st so far for the year. Yeah, we've been averaging anywhere between 165 and 180 high-risk files per year. And when I say high-risk files, everything that happens from the time that file is designated until that file completes the court system, we are constantly involved with that victim, constantly involved with all the other service providers. And so we may hold that file, that in particular, for 3 years, depending on how long it takes to go through the court system. So when I say that we're at 37 files right now, we're at 37 new high-risk files, and we're probably managing at least 100 to 130 from the year before. So this is a fairly new concept that HRP Victim Services, it's not a new concept in the UK, but it's a new concept for here in Nova Scotia. And when we have a high-risk file that's been designated, our team is now using the 8 stages of domestic homicide to look at what points in these 8 stages, how close are we to this couple being involved in a domestic homicide. We're looking at the pre-relationship history, if he's been stalking her or stalked previous partners. We're looking at the relationship, how quickly did it develop? And you heard Emma speak earlier about that love bombing. We're looking at that. We're looking at how that developed so quickly. We're looking at those signs of coercive control that are, obvious to us that that's what they are. We're looking at how the perpetrator is triggered. We're looking at escalation. We're looking at the pivots that oftentimes will happen. He gets arrested, and then he calls the next day because he's so sorry, he'll never do it again. And then she will let him back in, oftentimes without getting the orders varied. And police find out again when the victim has to call. We look at the premeditative planning, so specifically around choking, and I'll speak to choking in a moment, but we know that choking is a crime of passion, and we know that when you put your hands around somebody's throat, the intent is not to just harm them, the intent is to kill them. And so we look at whether there was choking involved. We look at, where the victim was at the time, what she was doing. All of those things factor into it. And then we look at the other homicides that have happened, and we look at some of the precursors to those homicides as well. And we, kind of look at it all in that way. Excuse me. And I wanted to speak to strangulation. We work very closely with Dr. Marnie Wood and also with Dr. Matt Bowes around training and for strangulation and for choking. We call it strangulation. A lot of people are still calling it choking. And so we've done a lot of work with bringing them in to train police officers around when you speak with a victim and a victim tells you that she has been choked or strangled, you can't just leave it at that. You need to ask the follow-up questions. You need to ask her, did you pee yourself when he choked you? Did you lose consciousness? Did you pass out for a few minutes and don't remember? Do you have swelling? Can you see swelling, or do you have swelling on the inside of your throat? Or did you lose your voice? Because we say to police all the time that that victim, as a result of that strangulation, could actually have a stroke within 24 hours of that incident happening. So the importance of at least offering to call EHS or encouraging that woman to go and get seen by a doctor as closely as they can after after it happens. We also will do that too as well. When we're speaking with victims, we ask them, did police ask you, if you lost incontinence? Did they ask you? And if they don't, then we kind of reiterate to her, it's really important for you to go and get checked. We've changed policy in HRP. Typically, high-risk files are designated 7 or higher. If we have an incidence within HRP and choking charges laid, that file is automatically designated as high risk. Doesn't matter if the ODERA is a 1 or 0, doesn't matter. It's a crime, like I said before, it's a very intentional crime, and we need to pay more attention to the specifics around, what brought him to choke her. Emma alluded a while ago to other danger assessments. We do use the ODERA. Police score the ODERA after the incident has occurred. And then we're all trained within our unit to do the Jacqueline Campbell danger assessment, which assesses for lethality. So we will often, the other thing that we do is we don't wait for a file that's a 5 or 6. We don't wait for another incident to happen to tip it over to the 7. If we have 5s or 6s, we automatically will contact that victim and offer a Jacqueline Campbell danger assessment. Oftentimes, that file will get bumped up to high risk once we do the danger assessment. And we know that because a score of 18 on the Jacqueline Campbell is extreme risk. And most of the women, we're keeping track, most of the women that we're doing these Jacqueline Campbells with on 5s and 6s and ODERAs are scoring upwards of 25 plus. So it's really important. And we changed, like I said, we changed policy within HRP so that we can designate the files. New to the province is the highest risk domestic violence table. We sit at that table and we can make recommendations to that table. We can send files to that table. It's a table, it's still in the prototype kind of stages right now, but it's kind of like those domestic violence high risk files where there's such a concern. And we've kind of stumped as to what we can do. So we have all the people who can make decisions and spend the money if we need it immediately. without having to go through levels and levels and levels. For instance, with income assistance, we would have to speak with the worker and then their supervisor, and then their supervisor would have to put it up again. All these people are sitting at the table. So they make the decisions. We can have stuff done immediately if we need to. And just recently in the last year, Nova Scotia Health has joined the table. We've been working since 2004 to get health at the table, and they've just arrived. They've come last year. We've got everything done. So now we're able to actually speak with the emergency room doctors and involve some of those folks into making referrals to the table, which has been great. We meet weekly with provincial board. We're meeting weekly. We get, I think we're up to, I don't know, around 30 cases right now of cases throughout the province that are so high risk that they need this level. And so presently we had 5 cases, but as of this morning, we have 6 at the table. So as I mentioned before with the ODERA, every report of domestic violence undergoes the ODERA process. The ODERA stands for the Ontario Domestic Assault Risk Assessment. Here in Nova Scotia, we brought the ODERA on board in 2005. We needed a risk assessment that we could use at our, within policing, that had been tried and tested and was validated. This is used widely in Ontario, and they use it up there to assess risk of recidivism. So we looked at all of our numbers and, did a lot of research into what we had here. And we're looking at an ODERA score of 7 or higher meets the criteria here for high risk. I am involved now in a working group. We are working with the folks who created the original ODERA, and we're updating it now so that it's going to include numbers for lethality for Nova Scotia. So we're actually working on that now. And these were some of our numbers from 2018 to 2024. Last year we had 163 high risk, but you'll see that we also had to manage the other 197 files where there were updates on the files, new files were being created and all of that kind of stuff. And now to our brainchild, the Domestic Violence Offender Navigator. Back when the domestic violence officer was given to our unit back in 2018, he came on board. And his role was to meet with the offender, to review their conditions, make sure that they understood what their conditions meant, answer questions that they might have, and then work with the rest of the team to kind of coordinate, that particular high-risk file. So the officer back then came to me and he said, "Dolly, I'm finding it really difficult to be the bad guy, to be the guy that's calling him up and saying, you committed this horrible crime. These are your conditions. This is what you're allowed to do. This is what you're not allowed to do." And then he tells me stuff. He says to me, "Well, I've got no place to stay. Sleeping on a couch. Do you know how I can get to see my kids? How can I do all these things?" And so Brad said to me, he said, "I find it difficult to be that good guy, bad guy, because then tomorrow when she reports that he came and slept on her couch last night, but then beat her up, I have to go and arrest him." So he goes, how do we balance that? So I thought about it, and I thought, well, if we're offering all these opportunities to the victim to not have to take him back, why couldn't we offer opportunities for the offender to get him hooked up with housing, to get him hooked up with counseling, to be that branch for him through child protection so that he can see his kids. Even we even can speak to somebody's workplace to say, listen, he's told you that he's been involved in violence in the home. He's actively going to start his counseling, but he's going to need to leave work about a half an hour early to get there. So, by being able to do that, we've been able to kind of bridge that gap as well. So I got some funding from, first of all, I got the go ahead from All the Matters That Be and HRP and said, you know what, I wonder if this would make a difference. Let's see what kind of a difference it would make. And Wendy came on board soon after, and we have been working with offenders, only offenders who accept responsibility. So that's the main criteria that they have to meet. They have to have accepted the responsibility of what they've done and want to move on, whether it's to reunite with their victim, with their partner, or just to co-parent the children safely. What we're seeing, and Wendy goes in with what she calls the gentle approach, and she'll call, she gets referrals from Jules, and she'll call the guy up and just ask him how he's doing. And that opens the door sometimes that leads into hours, doesn't it, Wendy, of crying, or hours of a story of how he found himself in the place where he is. Oftentimes she'll find out about how he was raised and what he saw as he was being raised, what the learned behavior was for him. And Wendy can better direct him to the services that he needs. Wendy and Jules follow the guys, mostly guys, follows them through the domestic violence court. They sit on the court docket every week. They follow them through. They often will call, when they have stuff going on that they need kind of some navigation through. I think Wendy gave me some stats this morning. She told me that since August 1st, she's received 143 referrals. So these are guys that have accepted responsibility and want to move on. She's contacted 84 of them, and actually 16 of them she's made immediate referrals to Brightside Counseling or Fireside Counseling. Fireside, I think it is. So we have a partnership with Fireside. They will take our guys right away, and they have a sliding scale, but most of the time, we're looking at $15 an hour for these counselors to work with the guys. Whereas, we're looking at $125 to $130 an hour, from other professionals. So great partnership that worked there. We hosted a conference in 2023, and we brought police agencies from across the Atlantic provinces to Dartmouth to talk about the program, to talk about some of our successes. And we even had folks come down from Regina to attend. They all went back with a little bit of the knowledge of kind of what we're learning. And we've actually had interest from Calgary Police, Regina Police, and I just met Thursday of last week with RCMP in Ottawa, who are seriously looking at the work that we're doing and the successes that we're having. So, so the process for the DVON really is Jules will make the recommendation. Jules will go through, look at his history, look at stuff that's been going on before. Take a really deep dive into having a conversation with the guy to say, are you ready for change? Is there something we can do to stop this violence? They'll either tell us, no, or not nicely, or they'll say, I want to hear more. And so then Jules will make the referral off to Wendy. Once that's done, then we kind of take a team approach to look at what the victim needs to stay stay safe, and we can base how we're going to do our work with him based on what she needs. So whether we need to hook her up with maybe after school programs or schools plus programs in schools because he can't be there to do, the childcare because he's in counseling or whatever. So a lot of that work is done, and it's done on a case by case basis. So Wendy stays connected with him. As I said, sometimes just for a couple of days, sometimes for a couple of months. She documents all of her contact with the offender, so we can go in and look at kind of how things are going. And she will often, as I said, contact maybe the employer or somebody close by to advocate for him to be able to go to his appointments. And then oftentimes we'll bring it back to the table. Wendy will come back to the table to report that she's been working with him and kind of what's been going on with that particular case. That's just a little bit more about the conference that we held in 2023. We brought Dr. Alan Wade down here from Victoria, and he did a piece on violence resistance and the power of language, and it was so powerful. We have police officers telling us that it's changed the way that they write their Crown briefs. So when we can measure success that way, we take that wholeheartedly. So how do we measure the success of the DVON? The offenders are taking responsibility, the ones that she's working with. They are going through the DV court process. Are they still offending? Absolutely. But are they reassaulting, and are those assaults worse than the one before? No, we're not seeing that happening. We're seeing that if they're breaching maybe their no contact, or they're breaching maybe some other conditions, not drinking or whatever, house arrest maybe, but they're not generally reassaulting and causing further harm to the victim. We've been very successful to get funding through the Advisory Council on the Status of Women 3 times. The Canadian Women's Foundation, I approached them for some money, and they called me immediately and said, Dolly, we don't fund programs for offenders. And I said, but we're not asking for a program for the offenders. We're asking for a program to keep women and their children safe. So they turned tables, and they gave me $75,000. So we were able to do the conference and keep Wendy employed. Last year, my last bit of bridge money was through the Proceeds of Crime Fund. I was able to get enough money to keep Wendy till the end of May. And now, thanks to council approving, we'll be able to keep her forever. Well, as long as she'll stay. As I said, we've had police agencies from Newfoundland, Ottawa, Calgary, Regina, and New Brunswick seeking information on our program. Am I taking too long? Am I good? Okay. So some of the other programs that we run in our office. Pardon? Did I skip it? Oh my goodness, that's most important. So we do a lot of training with police. We actually have a full 2 days with the cadets, and we spend every minute of those 2 days talking about being trauma informed. We've developed new add-on exercises to our DARA training. With our trauma-informed approach to policing, I did some work with and some training with Laurie Haskell, who's a psychologist in Toronto who works specifically on being trauma-informed and the practice of being trauma-informed. And she helped me to create a presentation that I do with police around being trauma-informed. And the whole presentation is stemmed around taking 5 seconds while you're on the steps of that house to think about what that victim might have has been through, and just to take those 5 seconds. And we talk a lot about the effects of long-term trauma on the brain. We talk about how victims are impacted by that and how they may react in ways that you don't find, unbelievable. But that's the way that her brain is conditioned to respond. Why some victims don't respond the way that you think they should. We do a little exercise with them. We give them 12 little yellow stickies, and we ask them to look at the scenario and with their police mind, put that scenario in the order that you think it happened. And every single time we do that scenario with them, we get everybody gets it exactly as the way it should have happened. And they're all put in groups. They all think it's great because they got it. They're great detectives. And then I read to them the statement that was taken from the woman when police arrived on scene. And it's so mixed up because she remembers the trauma that it is initiated in her brain. She doesn't remember things as they happen. She remembers things that are most important. So when we go through that exercise, oftentimes police will say, oh, okay, well, I get that now. She needed me to know that the kids called 911. She needed me to know, like, those are the things that she needed me to know. So we had a real breakthrough with that. And police, I go and do it now with the Office of the Criminal Investigation, the CID course. I go over and do it with them whenever they run a course now. We do it with the new cadets. They think it's a great game and they learn something from it. It's really cool. With our ODERA training, ODERA training is the driest training you can ever imagine. It's a lot of scales and facts. And so we were trying to think of a way to bring officers back into what it really means to be ODERA trained. So what we've done is I was watching a program on Netflix called I Am a Stalker. And it's a great, it's an American piece, but violence is violence. Doesn't matter where it happens. And so we sat down as a team and we took one of the episodes and it's with the actual perpetrator, and they actually interview some of his victims, and we sit down with our ODERA and we actually score the ODERA based on what we're seeing. And what we learned from that is we have to give a whole afternoon now to the ODERA training because there's so much talk amongst the officers around, no, this didn't happen, or did you see, but she said this. And so they're actually like trying to get their scores exactly right. And that's exactly what we wanted them to do. So we're doing that with them now. We actually have our victim service employees working 1 to 9 shifts once a week. And so when they come in, they report directly to one of the divisions, and they work their whole shift there. So they attend fall in, they answer questions. Officers will approach them in the writing room to ask them questions about cases. If something's going on, they'll jump in the car and go with them. So we're finding that's a really great way also for us to educate police on kind of, the up and coming and what's going on. And then we very much are working and looking forward to the introduction of the coercive control into the criminal code. I hear it's in second reading now, but and we tell our officers all the time, they're already doing it. They're already looking for ways by laying harassment charges or property damage charges or mischief charges. They're kind of addressing it. It just needs to be formalized. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And then some of our other programs, as if we have time for more, we have peace bond navigators. So some of our volunteers actually will get a referral from the court to meet with folks who want to apply for a peace bond, to help them fill it out. And then if they need support at Peace Bond Court, they'll actually go and go with them. We do emergency protection order support. We will help a woman through a 3-way conversation with the JP, be able to get her APO. We have our brochures. They're all translated into French, Arabic, Mandarin, and we're working right now on, I forget what the other one is. Anyway, we're working on getting that one done. We used to do training with the newcomers. We used to go in and do a domestic violence IPV training with the newcomers. It was a course that they had to take through ISANS. COVID kind of killed that, but we're slowly getting back into that now. We take referrals from the medical examiner's office. They will often call us because we're just around the corner. If they have a family coming in to do a next of kin or, that kind of stuff, sometimes they'll call us to come over and provide support, which we will. And we do public education programs whenever we can. We haven't been able to because of our shortage of staff, but now with a new caseworker coming on, I'm looking at that happening. And then our safe space, safe place workshops. That was born through, I also chair and was the founding member of Silent Witness Nova Scotia back in 2004. And we've been doing a lot of work with women who are experiencing domestic violence in their workplace by their perpetrator, whether that's him calling her all hours of the day, all of that, all of those kinds of things. So we actually will go in with and do workshops with the HR folks around how do you protect victims in their workplace? How do you protect other, your other employees from the hands of perpetrators? We do safety planning around safe places for her to park, maybe moving her from the back of the building to the front of the building, security. And it's great that it's like Fort Knox trying to get into your building, but if you go down and walk around the back of your building, the back door is propped open with a brick so people can go out and have a smoke, and how that's not a great practice. So we do those as well. Whenever we get asked. We've recently just done a bunch with Nova Scotia Liquor Commission because they have employees coming back to work that have been off for a while due to family violence. So we've been doing those as well. I feel like I'm tired. So questions, anyone?
One point of clarification in terms of the scope of geography, that wasn't quite clear to me. You're getting called from all aspects of the province. Within HRM, are we providing services to victims that come through both police incident management? Like if something happens with the RCMP, are you doing the same services?
No,
okay.
we're just with HRP.
Just HRP.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do get calls from across the province,
right,
for just general questions.
Okay, yeah. So knowledge referrals.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner or Vice Chair Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dolly.
You're welcome.
As I listen to this today, all I can think of is wow. When I say wow, it's with my heart and my insight into the energy required for you and your team to be able to do the job, navigate the job, stay safe within your own space, your mental health, your physical health, all of those layers. And I'm not sure how many of us ever thought about it that way for our victim services folks within the scope of what you've presented today. So it's impressive. Thank you. And please thank your team for that. I've known before, but it's good to hear again that the high-risk case protocol is a best practice, and it's a best practice that's being modeled across Canada, and we can be very proud of that, and you certainly can. the personal touch that's required in this role, and for you and Wendy and all of your team, I think is very powerful, in particular coming out of COVID. That connectivity on a very human level is something I think that has been lost in our society. And I think I think we all are working to move it back there, as
Yeah.
you would see in just about every hug that I give in this room. So I was really glad to hear that. Not, just hear it in your voice and hear it in your presentation everywhere. It was sprinkled within. The importance of the Devon Navigator that is something that we talked at the tables when I was with THANS, Transition House Association, and to now have it here and to be part of that change gives me so great comfort, because I believe strongly, and I did throughout that time I was with, is that the offenders can't just be expected just to suddenly figure out a way on their own to change and to heal and from whatever it is that's brought them to this space, right? Wendy, you've been instrumental in bringing that forward, I think, certainly from the conversations we had back then, and so you can be very proud, and I thank you for that. Now I'm going to get to I've got some questions. So related to Devon work that you do is attention to the offender. And I'm trying to put myself in a space of the victim. In my case, it didn't go to there, thankfully. But have you had to pivot or work through, or do you have to work through a victim being somewhat surprised that your agency would also be helping the offender? Does that create, I suppose I might be answering my own question, but does that create a fear, or does it create some sense of thankfulness and grateful, sort of a safety space, because they still care about their offender? There's a connection. In some cases, I can imagine that they would be afraid that the support system may not be there for them if you're also going to help him.
Mhm.
Another question would be the HRDVT. You noted that that's now in place. I think you said you're grateful, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is it working? Is it having a positive effect, is my question. If you could just expand on that a little bit. The last one is, and here's the one I'm really going to put you on the spot. So where did Chief go?
Little boys room.
Okay, so deputy and whoever it might be here, just be aware. I'm asking Dolly, with no repercussions, what else do you need to be successful? Because you're carrying a lot of important work.
Yeah.
And I know in the past, in conversations we've had, and certainly in my work on the board and in council, that it's been challenging to get that resource space for victim services.
Yeah.
And I know you enough to be able to say, what else do you need? Because I'm sure you already have that. I know that we've incrementally brought some new change even in this budget, right?
Yeah.
We close to finishing and approving it. What else could you use? And I'm asking that because I think that the board can play roles in supporting the work that you're doing.
Right.
Again, it's part of our strategic pillars and such. So those are my questions.
Okay. Now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So most of the referrals we get for the Devon come from the woman herself. A lot of the women want to reconcile or want to co-parent safely. So oftentimes they will ask for help for their spouse. And so then we'll make an automatic referral to Wendy. a lot of women will say to me, why should I bother going through this system again? Last time everybody was in my face for 2 months. Child protection threatened to take my kids. You guys did this, you guys were there, DOJ's there. And then all of a sudden it goes away. And then come time for me to testify in court, then everybody's back on my case again. And then I go get court prep and I go do the victim impact statement, which is re-traumatizing again, considering it's probably a year later. And then I go to court and I meet the Crown in the hallway, who says, at the end of the day, what do you really want? I just want them to leave me alone. And so they come to a conclusion that they're just going to give him probation for 2 years with counseling, ordered counseling and no contact. So they feel like that's the best thing in the best interest of the victim. When we've put the victim through months and months and months of trauma, and they don't even get to read the victim impact statement that it probably took them 3 weeks to write. By offering services to the guy, then that gives her, the opportunity to see that we're trying to work with him before the court orders him to get help. So if he can go into court 6 months later, 3 months later, and say, I'm already working with somebody, we're already working together, we're safely co-parenting, then that's really at the end of the day all they want. So are there people who call the office and say, I can't believe you're victim services and you're working with men? And I say, yeah, it's called defunding the police. Because really, we have a civilian doing work with offenders, and it's freeing up police to go do the rest of their job, right? So that's that answer. The next question was, I forget. Yep. At the highest risk table, at first I was skeptical. I was there. I was wondering what could come from this that we're not already doing at the community level. But the higher ups are at that level. The people with the money, the people that can make the change right away, today, not 6 weeks from now, they're there. So yes, I find that's what's making that work. And then how do I need people? Of course, I could use 5 more bodies. Yeah, it's people that I need, and I'm very grateful that we're getting another body, hopefully in next quarter, and a full-time Devon. So I may be back next year. I'll see how it works.
Thank you, Commissioner Bézic-Esquelin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dolly, for covering all of the excellent work that your team is doing. I'm especially heartened. Hardened as much as one can be in these difficult topics, that there is attention being given to the offender, because that is essential to at least secondary prevention, and we often talk about that offenders need to step up and take responsibility, and how can we expect them to do that if we don't provide some support? So I'm really glad to see that. My question comes back to what the chair mentioned about availability of services based on the dual policing model. I'm a bit surprised to know that it wouldn't be available, that it is only HRP, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. Does it mean that if you were in an area that receives service under HRD, that they would not have access to this, or is that, am I off on that?
For the Devon, you mean?
For all of this?
Oh,
like,
no, RCMP have victim services and domestic violence case coordinators.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, as well.
And for Devon as well then? For the
No, they don't have the
They do
Devon
not,
yet.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other Commissioner Mancini?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dolly, so good to see you.
I know.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to you and your team for the amazing work that you do. 2 questions. You had your slide about the time spent with police cadets. Is there follow-up with those cadets once they soon are sworn in and are on the job? And part 2 to that, what about the the experienced officer that's been on the job 5, 8, 10, 12 years, is there any, refreshers, updates? Because I'm sure that, I look at these seasoned veterans in the room here, when they were there 40 years ago, day one, that's a lot different now, right?
Yeah.
So what about the experienced officer?
So we get opportunities to do the block training with the officers that,
Sorry, and which block training?
it's block training. It's like
Oh,
refresh
yeah.
training that they do every year. So usually every second year, we'll get some time in the block training that we'll be able to go in and do the refresh.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff we're doing, like I said, in our 1 to 9 shifts, we're doing it, kind of doing those little reminders, those little crash courses on doing the ODERA properly, getting it done by end of shift and all that kind of stuff. And with the cadets, we let them know that, when they're out on their OJT that we're watching, we're looking at their crown briefs, we're looking at how they're doing stuff, we're looking at, are they getting their ODERAs done in time and all of that kind of stuff. And we've had a couple actually, they'll send us an email to say, I remember you saying this in the training. This is what happened. I'm wondering, did I do the right thing? So that always speaks to us, that they're actually listening.
They're paying attention. And part two, just very quickly, it's to build on the Commissioner Kent's comment about what else do you need. You alluded to something very simple, but being able to receive donations of cell phones after the election. Are there other things like that you need? When I look at the counselors in the room, we have the ability to reach out into our communities. Is there other things that fall in that similar category that we can assist with?
Gift cards are the biggest thing for us. Like I said, we often come upon victims who have nothing, who the paycheck was spent on drugs or alcohol, which led them to the police incident. Sometimes we will tap into the food bank. They have an open door policy with us. They'll fill up our trunk with food sometimes. And, clothing. Sometimes we run into folks that
Yeah.
need clothing, stuff like that.
I'm wondering that maybe this is something we could take offline where we may be able to assist in some way. We're creative in how we do that.
Yeah, that'd be
again,
great.
Yeah, thank you again, Dolly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other questions from any other commissioners? Commissioner Hitch?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Dolly.
Hi.
Thank you for that presentation.
Mhm.
So, Dolly, my question is around, so say if somebody's in a situation where they need to be transferred out of province, would you guys handle situations such as that?
Yeah, we work very closely with income assistance,
Mhm.
and we'll work to have them transferred out of province. A lot of times we'll connect them with the transition house here. Then we'll work with their income assistance worker, if that's the case, to have them transfer from one transition house here, maybe in Nova Scotia, to one in maybe Montreal. And then we kind of connect all the dots once we get there. So we get income assistance on board to get them moved.
Mhm.
I just worked recently with a woman. We got her up to a safe house in New Brunswick, and then coordinated getting shelter movers to come in, and they took all of her stuff, and we were able to put it in a container
All right.
and keep it there. And now New Brunswick is working on getting her housed up there. So
Mhm.
it's just a matter of coordinating.
Yeah, because I always found it mind blowing to me when I was working for housing, the fact that when somebody is being transferred from one community to another community within Halifax, which didn't make sense to me because, again, it's defeating the purpose
Yeah.
for that person to be safe, because it's easy to find that person.
It is. And families live in all of those communities, right?
Exactly.
Housing is a nightmare. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's coming as no surprise to you, but the emergency transfer program, we have women at highest risk, and the waiting list is a year. Oh,
Yep.
and it's not targeted towards intimate partner violence.
Mhm.
So, it's a nightmare.
It is. It is. I have another question. So, how would you treat a situation if it was internal? Say, if there was an officer involved in an internal department.
Yeah, we will often refer out. We trade back and forth. So
Mhm.
if I have a victim and it's an internal HRP officer,
Mhm.
I would contact our CMP Victim Services, and we'll trade back and forth so that they're getting the support they need without worrying about people finding out within like what they're getting for support.
Thank you, Dolly.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dolly, thank you immensely.
Yes,
sorry.
forgive me, Chair.
Chief
Just,
Mosher.
yeah, just to add just a couple of follow-up pieces, especially in follow-up to the Commissioner Vince's good question. There are some probably some important synergies to understand with respect to HRP's Victim Services Program and how that interlinks with the RCMP's Provincial Victim Services Program. So strong alignments within there, but there may be some value, and I'll only throw it out there that maybe perhaps down the road when the agenda allows, if the commission is amenable, we could arrange for that. Prior to the role that I've taken on here, was one of the founding members of that highest risk intimate partner violence table at the provincial level. Also served as a member on the the medical examiners intimate partner violence death committee investigation committee that way there. So there's a lot of different strengths, and I think that's a lot of it is that we don't understand exactly all the work that's going on, and a lot of parallels and a lot of probably doubling of efforts in a lot of ways too. So that may help just sort of strengthen the knowledge down the road if they're amenable. Let's just put it out there.
Thank you, Superintendent. We've given the hour of the day, we juggled the agenda a little bit. Item 10.2.1, which is the presentation by Dr. Amy Siciliano, the Acting Executive Director for Community Safety. We're going to defer that until another date that's convenient for Dr. Siciliano, and then Bill, the new Public Safety Commissioner, would be back as well. So I think that would be efficient. So in the interest of that, I wanted to thank Dolly immensely. It was extremely informative. It's such an amazing breadth of services. That's just blows my mind. And then to know educating all the groups that are involved, all the cadets, the permanent members, it's quite remarkable. And it was new information for me. I didn't realize the scope of the training that was ongoing. And we receive constant correspondence all the time, and we just received one that I had read that said, we needed to implement that type of training, and lo and behold, we're doing that type of training for our program, and I didn't know that. And there was a couple of other comments in there, in a particular letter that we had received about a crisis intervention. We're going to hear about that in a future session. And then as well, we had another comment in there about body worn cameras. And I realizing now, 3 out of 5 of these big recommendations we're actually actively, moving those items forward. So I'm really, really glad to hear that. Thank you. We'll move on to then item 10.2.2.
Excuse me, Chair. Before we proceed with Josh's item, we'll need to have a mover and a seconder to approve the deferral.
Thank you, Commissioner Kent. Thank you, Commissioner Mancini. All in favor of the motion to defer 10.2.1 to a future date, to next meeting? Yeah. Any? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on to 10.2.3. My apologies. Yeah, 10.2.3. So the appointment of to the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance. Josh, would you like to say a few words on that topic?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Josh Bates, Policing Policy Strategist. This is a fairly straightforward report. In accordance with our policy manual, there are 2 associations that the board shall belong to. So one is the Canadian Association of Police Governance. The other is the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance. So this is simply a motion to appoint a member from our board to their board. They meet 4 times annually, and their AGM is coming up in May, which is why this item is being brought forth at this time, so we can have a member participate at that AGM next month.
Thank you, Josh. Was there any comments, offers, interest in participating?
Well, I'll put the
in-
motion on the floor, then we can recommend somebody. Is that how we want to do it? Yeah, I can put the motion on the floor. That the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality appoint one member to serve on the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance Board. So moved.
Is there a seconder? Commissioner Bezic,
And
Ms.
then
Candler?
I'll nominate Commissioner Kent.
Commissioner Kent, are you willing to accept that nomination? Thank you. Is there a seconder for that nomination? Commissioners? Call, any other nominations? Any other nominations? Barring no other nominations, acclamation. You don't get many of those. All right. We don't have any other added items, correct, Madam Clerk, for number one?
That is correct.
Yeah, and no in-camera meeting required. We do have some in-camera minutes that need to be approved. Yep, we can do that here. Can we have a
Correct.
motion for the in-camera minutes?
Yeah, I'll move that the in-camera minutes be accepted as presented.
Can you
March
specify
3rd.
the date?
Second,
March 3rd, sorry, yeah, it's March 3rd minutes for 2025.
Okay, and the seconder is Councilor or Commissioner Mancini. And are there any errors or omissions that were noted by any of the commissioners for
Nope.
those in-camera minutes? Barring none, all those in favor of
Aye.
approving the
Aye.
minutes? No opposition. Item is carried. Notices of motion. Can I ask
We
if
have-
there is any notices of motion? Commissioner Mancini.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to put the following notice of motion on the floor. Take notice that at a future meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners for the Halifax Regional Municipality, I intend to move a motion to request a staff report from the Halifax Regional Police evaluating the performance of and findings to date of the use of the RCMP H Division Nova Scotia Sexual Assault Investigations Review Committee, SAIRC process in the review of sexual assault cases which do not lead to arrest.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other notices of motion? With no other notices, the date of the next meeting, unless determined otherwise right now, is June 4th. So nothing scheduled for May, but that may or may not change. We don't know. So for item 15, adjournment. Can we call for a mover to adjourn?
So moved.
Give that one to
Meeting.
Vincent.
Meeting adjourned.
Get him on the record.
Thank you.